2, 1, and we're live. This is Nifty Culture. I'm Pio. I'm here with my partner, Mal. What's going on, Mal?
What's up, Pio? How's it going?
It's going well. We get a chance to talk to the co-founder of Quest Nutrition, the co-founder and CEO of Impact Theory, Tom Bilyeu. How are you, Tom?
Dude, I'm doing good. Whenever I get to hang out with you gents, I am down for it.
And we're really happy to have you here too, Tom. So, you came on the show a couple months back. We kind of did an interview at that point. You were getting into NFTs. I know you'd bought into a few projects, but now we have something really exciting to talk about, which is your drop that's imminent through Impact Theory. So I wanted to just ask you, how did you kind of get to this place? What do you view the drop as? Spill the beans, Tom.
All right, let's do it. So how did I get to this place? So we probably talked about this last time, so I'll keep it brief. But 6 years ago, somebody showed me what we would now call an NFT, and he called it a V atom. And he said, this is going to create digital scarcity. And I was like, oh, shit, that is going to change my business forever. And then promptly forgot about it because the tech wasn't ready yet. But I knew the concept was sharp. And so at the beginning of this year, when I heard the letters NFTs put together, within 72 hours, we had allocated millions of dollars to developing platforms and projects and all kinds of stuff. So that to me was a no-brainer, just understanding how it's going to change everything. So when we started Impact Theory, what I said to the team was, because you have to imagine, we're going from this big company, Quest, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, 3,000 employees, and I take 5 people with my wife and I, and we start a new company. So we go from, this big thing to like this small hustler team. And I said, our job, we're trying to disrupt Disney. We're trying to make sure that nobody gets to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset. And we're going to do it at scale through story. But our job is to stay alive long enough as a company to find our moment of disruption. And honestly, did not know what that was going to be, just knew that we were going to have to find that. Because if you're taking on an incumbent like Disney that has 90-year head start, billions of dollars in IP and billions of dollars in revenue, it's like, how are you going to outplay them? So we're looking for that moment. And it's exactly what we did at Quest. Is nobody had made a protein bar that tasted like it had sugar but didn't. And so we were looking for like, what's that thing that we're going to understand that the players in the space don't get? And so seeing NFTs, understanding where that could go, knowing that as a community builder, I think I can be more effective in the long run. One, because you have the founder, right? For better or worse, they don't have Walt anymore. And so they don't have somebody that can really be in the thick of it with people. And I think that's going to give us a huge advantage as we get into Web3. And so we just went all in creating things that we think will add a freakish amount of value. And if I was going to sum up what Web3 is, Web3, beyond just being distributed, is an opportunity for communities to capture a lot of the economic value of the things that they help to grow. And if you're wired to love that and to be excited about it and want to create things in that vein, then you've got a real shot. And so that, I think, is where we're going to make a name for ourselves and why we have ended up here, as you said. And then there was another part to that question.
Well, I mean, I think you answered both parts, Tom. I'm going to give you credit for that one for sure. Look, when I think about the mission, because I've listened to your podcast really since I think like 2018. I first learned about you when you were on the Joe Rogan podcast, or learned about you in the kind of media and content sense. And so I'm aware that the mission of Impact Theory, like you just kind of alluded to, is for people to, to give people access to the resources to be able to develop this growth mindset. And I feel like the NFT technology and the structure of NFTs is just such a natural and wonderful opportunity for you to be able to deliver that through this community building. So I know that you have different tiers of this project. I really like the way that you've structured it so far. Can you talk about the structure of the NFT and what you kind of were looking to accomplish with the way that you built it out?
Real quick, before we get into the project, sorry, I actually wanted to make a comment that was really interesting. And going back to the Joe Rogan podcast and talking about Disney, and just briefly before we go into the nuance, what's really interesting for me is what's happened recently with NFTs and the fact that we're seeing, Marvel and DC Comics and DC starting to become incredibly litigious, protecting their IP. And so, you know, a little while ago, when you have this lofty goal and you talk about the moment being right for you, we're seeing all these people complaining on Twitter about, you know, Jose Delbo and all these things. And my recommendation to all of these people is don't look back. That's history, right? We're in the future now, and with things like Bored Ape Yacht Club and, you know, a lot of other IP that's being created right now in the NFT space, the next $1 billion franchises are here. And so for people to say you can't create the next Disney, you can't do this, the next superheroes are being created, the next, you know, all new media is being done. So can you talk for a moment about that opportunity and how the transition from that old media to the new media, and then let's get into all the nuance. But I'm curious, because of the importance of this shift that's happening, if you can provide just a little bit more color.
Yeah, for sure. So as I think about IP, it'll be, and the litigious side, it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. And I think that the companies are going to end up handicapping themselves. Okay, so this is a big idea. I'm going to start pulling it apart. If at any time you're like, hey, this doesn't really make sense, grab me, rein me in, point me where you want me to go. But I have a really interesting thesis about what is happening right now. So never in a million years did I think that I would launch videos that say, hey, we're headed towards collapse. And never did I think that NFTs would be a natural part of that conversation. But here's what's happening. So I heard a really smart person say that the reason that young people today feel so disenfranchised is because older people, the previous generations, and you get this with like all the boomer comments, right? So there's this natural sort of ageism thing that's happening, and people feel perfectly justified in disparaging old people. And so now why? And so this person's hypothesis was that they have not relinquished power in the way that previous generations relinquished power to young people. And as they were saying it, I was like, that does not jive with what I know about human nature. You have to pry power from people's cold, dead hands. Nobody passes it off. But up until, say, 40 or 50 years ago, it was such a physically demanding job. Anything. Like, you just got tired and you wanted to go home. But now it's like you can run a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate from your bedroom on a computer. And so now it's changing the game of people aren't aging out of the system due to physical limitations anymore. So now it becomes purely a question of cognition and relationships and reputation. And what do you get more of as you get older? All of those things. So now you're actually in a position where you're more likely to be able to maintain power as you get older, which creates this weird friction of, at the time in my life where I'm supposed to be able to get ahead because I'm young and vigorous, now I'm getting trounced by people that have the reputation, the Rolodex, and the knowledge that they need to keep messing me up. Okay, so it creates this friction. Think of it as tectonic plates. As tectonic plates build that pressure, they're not actually moving yet, right? So you've got all this potential energy. It finally releases when they slip and you get an earthquake. What we are living through right now is the earthquake. So if you think of Satoshi's white paper as like that first real hit, and now everything is aftershocks after that. It's literally, and I don't know how much you guys care about swearing, but basically what you have is, this is the moment of fuck the man. So people are like, yo, I've been held back. By what? By who? I'm not entirely sure. People are sort of lashing out at everything, and they're just like, fuck the man. And so when you distribute a system that people think is broken and holding them back, and they think, oh shit, over here is a system where I can just get in, I can create something and immediately get it to the people that support it and love it, versus over here where I have to like convince somebody, fuck that. Like, I'm going over here. Okay, so you have that tension, you get the release of the earthquake, it's all reverberating now. And what's happening is you run into this quote by Max Planck, this incredible physicist. And he says, science does not advance one insight at a time, it advances one funeral at a time. Now, the reason he's saying that is all of us, when we're young, we don't know how the world works. And so we sort of cobble things together. We're very open-minded because we have to be. So nature has primed us to be at our most open when we are young. And we just don't have things that work yet. So of course we're open. Then over time, we start to figure out how things work. And then because it works, we leverage it. And then that what was once us being open begins to calcify into dogma. Okay, so it's looking like this thing is breaking along age lines, but it's actually breaking along the lines of being open-minded or closed-minded. Now, it happens to be that young people tend to be open-minded. Now, exacerbate the situation with No matter what age you are, you're going to be afraid of change. Technology moves fast. The older you get, the less likely you are to be nimble enough to move fast, even if you are open-minded. So now what you have is this grand funeral at the cultural level of all the old ways of doing things, call it Web 2.0, they're dying. And there is this new way, and it is happening so fast that it is going to absolutely destroy things. Legislation won't be able to keep up with it. When I think about, literally, I turned away for 3 weeks to build, the NFT and like really put and I'm not joking. I've only like really had to look away from everything for about the last 3 weeks. And I look back up and Genesis Kongs have flipped CryptoPunks. And you're like, what? So, dude, they weren't even on my radar as like a credible threat, but they like figure out this banana token, leverage it against the community that they've built just like really religiously. That gives you an idea. Even the new guy, CryptoPunks, just got ousted by the like new guy. So this stuff moves so fast, and it's going to be about who adopts that stuff the fastest. But you've got that rocket fuel of fuck the man. So they're young, they're already tech savvy. You've got the notion of young people. So in Max Planck's quote, the reason that it advances one funeral at a time is because young people grow up believing it to be self-evident. So fuck the man. The system is broken and been holding me back. And oh, by the way, when I was 7 years old, I was getting paid to play video games. So now, Marvel, you want me to go see a movie and I don't get anything for it? I can't resell my ticket after I've seen the movie. There's no like follow-on roadmap to the ticket I just bought. Like, it will seem so crazy to them.
Right.
But now you've got leaders in every company that are going to be saying, well, hold on a second. I've built this, mega company by doing things the old way. And so they're not going to want to change. I mean, even look at Fortnite versus Axie Infinity. Axie just made more money than Fortnite. Let that one sink in. So it's like all this stuff is changing so fast. And you're asking CEOs to go, oh, I built this very successful thing doing this. And now I have to bet on this whole new thing that's crazy. I don't understand it. My mind is beginning to calcify into dogma because I've done all this shit and it actually worked. So how do I even get my head around breaking that, convincing the board or whatever to let me do this distributed thing, to give power to the community, to give let the community capture some of the value? People are going to be like, there's no way. So you've got to be wired in a certain way. Like, think about this. I'm about to launch the Impact Theory Founders Key, and I will win on the jump for sure. But then I'm going to support it for the next 40 years. 90% of the long tail value will be captured by my community, not by me. What business has done that historically? Where you say, hey, look, I'm going to get a win up front. There's no doubt. But I'm a super public person. I'm here. I'm betting my whole reputation on this. So barring getting hit by a bus, I'm going to make good on this. And for the next 40 years, I'm going to make sure that my audience is capturing 90% of the value of the key. Like, it is a business model that will break the brains of most people who try to embrace it. And so you have to understand one thing and then be wired a certain way. So you have to be wired to love to see other people win. So when you see someone in your community, like we're going to do this golden ticket thing where the top tier one is hidden. There's a certain number of them hidden within the cheap ones. And so imagine you just spent, let's say, 0.1 ETH. So call it, $350, $400, whatever. And you get something that's selling for 3 ETH. And then let's say it goes up in value. So dude, that's like brain breaking for somebody who just turned $350 into, $10,000 on the jump. So you have to love that. You have to want that. You have to be so excited for that person. So that's number one. And then number two, I always explain to people, I spent 20 years clawing my way to CEO in like the most aggressive, like Thunderdome environment where it was like, everybody's coming in like ready to fight every day. And then when I finally got there, I was like, all right, everybody, cool. I just got hazed to shit for 15 years. And now what we're going to do is elevate everybody. And I see myself as the soil in which other people grow. Now, if you actually love that and can actually do that, it becomes this incredible vehicle, because not only is your team like that, so your team wants you to win, but then you treat your community like that. Now they want you to win. Now, the only thing you can trust me to do is be selfish. So, and the only thing I can trust you to do is be selfish. So now what you have to ask is, when Tom is at his most selfish, what is he doing? And the answer is building a community that's hyper engaged. Why? Because I actually believe that I can sway culture through films, TV, video games, comics, NFTs, to make sure that nobody gets to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset. Now, whether you think that's a worthy use of my life or not, the question is, am I actually sincerely pursuing it every day? And the answer is yes. And I've been doing it out in the open for the last 5 years. So people can, I mean, literally, there's so much history. They can go back and watch thousands of hours of content at this point. So if I'm doing that, then the most selfish thing I can do is get a community that's so riled up that when I go pitch a project at Netflix, 5,000 of them are standing in the parking lot with a sign that says, I will watch anything that Impact Theory puts out. Now, as I learned at Quest, whoever controls the audience controls the negotiation. So if I can mobilize my community like that, then you can see how selfish that is for me. That's a huge advantage. And you're telling me all I have to do is like pour value into this NFT key and just make sure at every turn they're getting way more out of it than they put in? Cool, count me in. Because what I need is the community. The very thing I need is the community. And so that's like this moment that NFTs created. So when you ask about like, what does that really look like? Where are we going with content? It's like, once you understand that, now this gets really interesting. Now, how we're going to do content, we just revealed today this thing we're calling right to partner. So because I have a very specific thesis on what I'm trying to do to culture, I can't just dip into a community and say, you tell the story. So I've tried that with hired writers. It is very hard to get people to understand what actually empowers a human being. Now, maybe someday part of what we do is that, and I'll experiment with it all day. But right now, we plan to maintain the control over what the story is, but make sure that people that hold the keys are able to get advantages. It could be early access. It could be discounted access, could be free access, whitelist. There's a whole host of things that they will get depending on the drop, who our partner is, if there is one, the size, all of that stuff, but that they get in on those projects. And then each of those projects is a universe unto itself. And of course, we'll be in there listening to the community, what's landing, what's not landing, and then just keep pushing forward.
Sounds incredible. You covered a lot there that comes from the sort of Bitcoiner mindset of decentralization. And it gets me so excited. You said it so eloquently that it really does make you think like what's coming next. I have a question related to what you just talked about. This new business model of the creator wins, the customer, right? The community wins. We've seen it with Bored Ape Yacht Club. We've seen it with VeeFriends. My assumption is that we're definitely going to see it with Impact Theory. Who's getting cut out? Is it a middleman that's getting cut out? Or is it just a full-on change in the way business is going to operate in the future?
So one, you are yourself foregoing some of the, call it medium-term profits and long-term profits, but you're getting something in exchange. So you've basically created a new, I don't like to think of it like this, but to just make this make sense so that you can follow the economics, you've created a new product. So when you look at what Facebook did, and you go, wow, how are they able to give all this for free? Like, this is so crazy that they've got all these developers making this amazing thing that allows me to connect to my friends. Why are they not charging me for this? And then you realize, oh, they're taking my data. So now the new model is, whoa, why are they giving me all this value in this founder's key? Like, this is crazy. Why would they do that? And then you realize, I need that community. I need that community that believes in what I'm doing. I need that community that's like, this content really matters. And they're going out to their local PTA and saying, parents, you got to get your kids to read this comic. Guys, you have to watch this show on Netflix, right? Everything Impact Theory does is amazing. Now, as long as the projects or the products that I actually put out deliver on that, and people feel good about what that content delivers, and as a part of that community, they're reaping the benefits of the continued thriving of Impact Theory. Now, all of a sudden, there's this mutually beneficial relationship where I'm willing to give up something, but I created something new in order to exchange for that. So I'm giving you this, the 90% of the long tail value of something, but I have satellite products that I can continue to monetize. And we make sure that, so just take a PFP project. So Founders Key drops on October 13th. And people are going to be holding their breath. Am I really going to give value? Is Tom really going to deliver? And then what they're going to find out is in early November, we already have a PFP project that is absolutely top tier art. We've got a whole team on this. We've got a story planned out over 3 years. This is something that we'll support for 5 years, whether it makes money or not. Like, and I think that alone is going to crush. That alone is its own universe. If that was all that I was bringing to the table, I'd be doing the press just as hard and going out and telling people what I'm doing. And yet that's just another piece of this. So you get at the high level, the legendary tier, there's only 2,700 of those. They'll have the right to whitelist. If nothing else, we may offer other perks as well. More information coming. And so now you get this incredible relationship of, okay, you guys are reaping the benefits of this project launching, but I'm turning this into a franchise. And so what you've done is given life to it. One, in the initial sale, now I get like the starter funds to reinvest back into that project to really put some wind into our sales. It's also a tremendous amount of awareness. And that community, again, the thing that I'm giving up that long tail for, but what do I get out of it? I get them out there just sharing their excitement, telling people about it, right? And so as you grow that community, they become your fiercest allies, telling people what's going on, making sure that there's awareness. Because in any business, if the problem that you have is only a problem of awareness, you don't actually have a problem. And so what we're doing is putting ourselves in that position where we have these killer products, stories that people love, PFP projects that blow people away, mechanics that people are going to fall in love with. We've brought on so much dev talent. We're going to do crazy things over the next 12 months. And so as people see the way that that life cycle looks, and then they look at our map and realize, holy hell, they're already developing 10 out right now today. And if that's what we plan to execute on over the next 2 years, what does it look like in the next 5? And so giving them those wins allows us to expand the community, because it will never make more keys, but we will launch more projects. And there are fewer keys than there will be total people coming into that project. So every project adds additional people to that community.
It sounds amazing. And, you know, I saw when I was looking through all of the different kind of perks of the different tiers for Legendary, there's a monthly call with you. Is that right?
Yeah. So obviously that's not one-on-one.
Right.
There aren't enough hours in the day. So we'll let the community decide what they want to do there. So my gut instinct was always that that was going to be one-on-one. So that it was very special, and they could, if they were the one that won it in the raffle, that they could sell it if they wanted or cash in on it. So it was a way for people like, I mean, look, I've been paid tens of thousands of dollars for somebody to sit down one-on-one with me. So I know there's a market. So for them to be able to auction that off and them capture all the value of that, right? So I do the work, they capture all the value. But if the community would prefer to make it like either all 2,700 of them, or if they would prefer to break it into chunks, I'm completely agnostic. So I want to know what they want, and then we'll deliver on that.
And that's so cool, like the development of the product by the people that buy it, right? And that's like the whole NFT thesis, is that it's a community engaged thing. We're seeing it now with content, with media. And, you know, since you've been talking about building the next Disney for at least 3 years, I've been personally hearing you talk about it for at least 3 years. So I don't know how long you've been talking about it before that. With NFTs coming along, do you feel like, oh my God, this is like just such a natural slam dunk? It's almost like an alley-oop for you, since you were already planning on doing this and you're already someone that's open-minded and willing to kind of plug in when you recognize this technology that's really changing the world. Does this accelerate your plans at all for what you're building? Does it change anything?
It changes everything. This has sped us up. I'm not kidding, by 100x.
Yeah.
So, you know, what we had mapped out for the, 2 and 3 year plan now becomes the 1 and 2 month plan.
Wow.
And it's given me, because when you can see the path to revenue. So look, I don't think it's a mystery to anybody that I had a massive win with my previous company. So it isn't that we haven't had the capital, it's that I couldn't see the path to revenue. And so we were being nice and methodical. We were growing every year, but it was like, I know what hyper growth is. I know what you have to do. I know the risks you have to take. And so I knew enough not to do that. But the team we were always focused on, once we find that moment of disruption, we're going to go all in. And so that's why we moved so quickly and so aggressively. It was so obvious that this is that moment. So in less than a year, we've doubled our staff. We'll probably double it again in the next 18 months. And all of it going into the things that we're going to create. And look, there is a real upside to going in front of it. I've been in front of the camera now for almost 7 years, I think. So there is a real advantage to going in front of the camera and talking as fast as you can and giving as much real advice as possible. I'll tell anybody anything that I know. I'm not holding anything back. If somebody wants to know how to grow a business, if they want to know how to launch a competitive podcast of mine, I'll teach them everything. You want to know about NFTs? I'll give you the information as fast as I can fucking talk. Now, when you do that, and you do it day after day, month after month, year after year, the result is 7 years in, when you say, hey, I'm doing a drop, you get, like, literally, there's somebody in the comments right now. This is Tom Always Delivers. So odds are that I don't even know that person. But they've had some kind of relationship with me over the last 7 years. And the thing that I hold myself accountable to is I never say anything that isn't real. Meaning, if you take the advice I give you, it will actually make your life better. So some percentage of the people actually go and do something and it makes their life better. So now you can imagine when I go, hey, I'm looking for artists. The artist that raises his hand is the one that's like, yo, you changed my life. And so now I'm getting top tier talent that I otherwise would not be able to get because, oh, we're too small or whatever. And we have recently hired a former Disney executive. We've got one of the most talented visual artists I've ever seen who has relationships with the projects these people have worked on are the biggest franchises of all fucking time. And they are now working at Impact Theory. It's crazy. And it's the result of clear vision, what I'll call intoxicating people with certainty, delivering year after year so people know what's up, and then creating an environment where people can thrive emotionally and financially. And so when those words hit somebody whose life you have already changed, you just end up getting crazy talent. And so that's going to be the real differentiator for us, is now I'm seeing how rapidly we're able to accumulate this just crazy talent. So this changes everything. It speeds everything up a lot.
That's awesome. And it's really, I got goosebumps earlier today on Spaces when that one woman just came up and Pio and I were both listening, and she didn't have anything to say other than you had a massive impact on her life. And I think, you have your core tenets and you stick to them, and not everyone can do that, right? It's difficult. There's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of confidence. There's a lot of affirmation. And so some of that does come with your ability to execute. And it's two simultaneous things. I don't want to, it takes a lot of hard work to be lucky, and people discount that often. But it's awesome that you're in a position to change people's lives. And I believe every word you say. And one of the things that also resonated with me earlier on Spaces was I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek. And, people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. Had a profound impact on my life. And so hearing you bring that up as well, and almost it wasn't intentional, but it just told this narrative that it's like, you do have to work harder. You do have to stay focused. You do have to have conviction and a mission that you believe in. And so how do you encourage people that lack focus, and any tips that you have for anyone that's trying to get better in their life? And I don't want to make this about that. I do want to talk about the tokens, but I'm just curious because today's been an interesting day with you. And then right after that, you're bringing your wife on to talk about exciting things and empowerment. So I'm just curious if you have any advice to anyone who may be turning in on all the, we broadcast this on Pio's Twitter, my Twitter, YouTube. It's everywhere right now. So a lot of different viewpoints. I'm just curious if you have any quick tips on how do you stay focused?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it has maybe a counterintuitive answer. So people want to hack, and I get that. But the real answer is you must become obsessed. Now, how do you become obsessed? Because here is the great fallacy in our culture. People think that they're born with a why inside of them, a mission inside of them, and it just doesn't work like that. If Steve Jobs had been born 10,000 years ago, he probably still would have been extraordinary, but he would not have created the iPhone. And so the iPhone is as much a result of timing as it is of Steve Jobs. And so once we understand, oh, I see, I'm built with the capacity for something, but I have to do something to actually turn that potential into something usable. And because for some people that happens when they're young, we mistake that for people who are born with something, right? So it's not a mistake that Mozart's father was not only a piano teacher, he was a piano teacher that specialized in teaching young kids. So you take a piano teacher that specializes in teaching young kids, and suddenly Mozart starts playing piano at 2 years of age. Now, as your brain is developing, if you're encountering something like that in this really regimented fashion, it actually changes the shape of your brain. You can actually brain scan somebody and tell whether they play piano or guitar. You can see a difference, not only between somebody who plays music and doesn't play music, but someone who plays a piano versus somebody who plays, say, the violin, because the piano uses both fingers or both hands, and the violin only uses one. So it is in terms of like the dexterous movements. And so it's this really fascinating thing where some people get it young and then we think, oh, they were born with it. So then we think, oh, we're broken because we weren't born with it. And we get really bummed out and we turn inside and we think, no, maybe it's just hiding in there somewhere. And I just need to meditate and I need to find it. You don't find it. So inspiration, passion, obsession, whatever word we want to use, that isn't something that is an archaeological dig. It's an architectural build. So you're going to say, okay, what gives me more energy than it takes? So you have to experiment, find that thing. It will not immediately present itself as like the thing you're meant to do with the rest of your life. It's just like, oh, that's cool. I like that. All right, cool. Now go really engage with that. If the more you engage with it, the more fascinated you become, this is a good vein. We want to keep going. Now, once you realize, whoa, I'm fascinated with this, I really want to get good. Now we're going to get into the passion loop that's going to allow us to have that obsession, that's going to allow us to like keep focused and just keep going. So, all right, I start gaining mastery in this thing. By gaining mastery, now I can get into a passion-based feedback loop. Because here's what passion is. You work really hard at something that you like, that makes you actually better, gives you usable, tangible skill set. You deploy that skill set in the world in a way that serves not only yourself, but other people. And then those other people do things like join you in a Twitter space and they say, you know, with tears in their eyes, you've changed my life. Now you can imagine how that made me feel, right? It's fucking emotional. And you're like, I want to hear that again. I want that same rush again, right? And so that woman made me feel the way I want to feel always. And so now I'm like, well, if I got even better at helping people, would I get that feeling more? Yes, I would. So cool. Now I'm going to go spend time getting better at this thing. But it's for that feedback loop of being like, yo, I actually helped her. And that made me feel awesome. And I want to feel awesome like that all the time. Now, once you realize that was a path that I walked for years and years and years with intention of saying, hey, you know, I've noticed about myself, it gives me more energy than it takes when I solve my own mental problems. It gives me more energy than it takes when I tell people what I figured out. Even though I'm often embarrassed, right? Because I'm not super smart. I don't get things very easily. I have to beat my head against the wall to really get things in. And people think because I can talk fast that I think fast, and I don't think fast. And that I spent a lot of years being embarrassed by that, feeling badly about myself because of it. And so it's like, okay, well, that's just the reality. But because I have to think through things so carefully, because I have to often make mistakes and learn from them, I know how to tell people how to do it because I've stubbed my toe on all the obstacles. So now I'm like, hey, watch out for this, be careful about that. And so it becomes this thing that you invest in, that now you have all this energy around, you're getting this cool feedback, you're in this passion-based loop of the better I get, the more people I help, the better I feel. So now I want to stay focused on that because of how it makes me feel. But people don't do that early work of like, what's that thing I'm going to pursue, that I'm going to go develop that passion-based loop. And so it all ends up breaking down around clarity. People don't know what they like. They haven't explored the world enough. Kevin Kelly has this phrase. He says, don't prematurely optimize. Most people prematurely optimize. The first thing they hear is, oh, bankers make a lot of money, so they go become a banker. And they never stop to look at, maybe you would have preferred being a nurse, or maybe you would have preferred being a coder, right? So, but you have to explore first.
That's really quick, and then I'm gonna be quiet for a while. But it's funny. The analogy that you just said was really powerful when you think about, you know, machine learning and everything that's going on right now. 5 years ago, you had to have a supercomputer. Now my 3090 can create models on the fly. But what the model needs is a lot of data. And so with limited data about a banker, for instance, you may choose to go be that. But without experience, without massive inputs of data, you can't create the model that's actually going to create true success. That's really, really powerful.
So true.
So true. And you know what you said, like, about people optimizing too early. I think we're seeing a lot of people, really myself included, that optimize too early. Then they're in like a job and it's not something that they truly enjoy. And then the NFTs come along and it's like, I like this. Like, this is what I want to be a part of. So we're seeing so many people say that they quit their jobs. We're seeing so many people say that NFTs have given them, new life. It's just so cool to see. And I'm sure that you're going to be seeing that with people that buy, this project. The other thing that I think is so fascinating is, like, when you buy a project like this, I think, or just really any NFT project that does well and appreciates, right? You get the value that the project provides, but then if the actual token also appreciates, it's like such good use of your resources to put the money into it. And I think that that's such a fascinating model. We kind of already touched upon it, so we don't have to kind of go back into it. But I just want to call that out because it really is amazing to me that that's a possibility now. So, talking about the project, I know we have a few different tiers. Can we talk about where we're at? I know not all the information is out there, and so you'll have to kind of make your own decisions about this. But for the 3 tiers, can you kind of talk about the main differences between them?
Yeah, for sure. So tier number 1 is the legendary tier. That's the full meal deal. So every perk we're ever going to talk about, that one is going to get. So the full meal deal, legendary tier, gets everything that the heroic tier, which is the one below that, and the relentless tier, which is the entry level tier, gets. So then the heroic tier is going to get what we call select things from the legendary tier and fewer. So the categories shrink. I think there's 2 or 3 categories that the heroic tier does not have from the legendary list. And even within those categories, it only has select ones. So if there are 10 things in a category that the legendary tier has access to, then maybe there's only 5 that you're going to get in the heroic tier. And then when you get down to the entry level tier, relentless tier, that's the word that we use to describe that is limited. So there are fewer categories, and now you have limited access to things. Now we want to make sure that all 3 tiers for their price are just ridiculous, that you're getting way more value than you pay for. But there is a very clear difference between the 3 in terms of what you get access to.
Okay, awesome. And, for someone that maybe is a recent fan of Tom Bilyeu, like, or of impact theory, someone that doesn't know that much about impact theory, but now is taking a little bit of interest and now they're looking at the project. In your opinion, like, I know we've already talked about a lot, but what makes this project attractive to someone that maybe hasn't followed you for years, but something that might stand out to that person?
Yeah, so there's different ways to look at the offerings. So we wanted to create something where it's like, okay, there are so many different aspects of our master plan of how we're actually going to be the next Disney, and then make sure that the things that you take in from the stories you can actually learn to apply in your life. So we included all of them. And then we know that some people are going to focus on things more than others. Now, where I think somebody who's like, I don't really know Tom, but there's a lot of hype and buzz around the project, let me see if I want to ape in, where they're going to zoom in is all the different projects that we're going to be releasing in the coming years. So like I said, we have one that drops, I think, slightly less than 3 weeks after the Founders Key release. So right away, that's going to, depending on what tier they get into, could get them whitelist, could get them something at a discount, could get them something for free. So now it's like, wait, so you're saying that this other project, which I think the odds of that project selling out are actually much higher than the keys. So the keys are like, yo, are people going to get what we're doing? Like, is this really going to be the beast that I think it's going to be? That one's got question marks, and I feel like I have to fight for every sale. The other one, when people see the art and the roadmap, it's like we will have to go way out of our way to avoid a gas war. Like, that's going to be, people are going to go crazy. So we have one of the world's most talented artists, a guy who's been working forever. When you see his art, your brain is going to leak. When you see the roadmap, the quote I gave on Twitter was, motherfucker's going to hemorrhage. Like, it's just, people don't even know. So like we've got a whole thing planned out with that's going to freak people out. So somebody looking at that going, wait, okay, so I get some kind of level of access to that. And others. Like it isn't just that one, but it's gonna, and the other one we've already announced that'll be coming in early to mid 2022, depending on how fast we can build the tech out. We're going to be doing something really cool with the Neon Future franchise with Steve Aoki. So we're doing a PFP project that's going to push the bounds of the technology, and it's going to be dope. So in the story of Neon Future, there's these two separate factions. You've got the authentic, who have no technological updates, and then you've got the augmented, who are basically like cyborgs, but in a more sort of everyday kind of way. And I won't say more because we haven't revealed everything, but you can imagine if I'm saying we're pushing the boundaries of the technology, there are two paths. You can sort of get where something like that might go. And again, if you're a key holder, you're going to have some kind of premier access, early access, discount free, something to that. And those are only 2 out of 10 that we're actively developing right now. That doesn't even take into account that we've got more beyond that. Now, you can only put out so many a year. So I want people to be thoughtful about thinking, okay, they might have 10 in development, but we're not doing 10 in the next 12 months. So it's like, you've got to remember, for me, this is a long-term play that we're not just trying to pump these out. Each one is a franchise that we plan to carry all the way to the screen. Now, there are gatekeepers in there, so I can't guarantee that it will make it to the screen. But oh boy, can I tell you that I will do everything in my power to make that happen. I mean, that's my whole thesis, right? So I won't rest until a massive amount of these matter to the world.
We believe you. And I think that those gatekeepers are going to hemorrhage. You know what I'm talking about?
there's some pain coming. I actually have, I have the same question that Pio just asked, but the opposite interpretation. So there may be the crypto natives that don't know who Tom Bilyeu, the team behind Impact Theory, and you have an amazing team just watching the Discord and the passion. It's incredible, and I know it's not just you building the ship. So shout out to all of your team. But there's also a lot of Tom Bilyeu and Impact Theory fans that are not native in crypto yet. And have you explored anything? You know, Nifty Gateway is doing a lot right now where they're picking projects and providing a fiat onboard, and it's really cool that they can do a lot of this. So I'm curious if you've thought at all, and this came up today on Spaces as well. I don't know what the heck an NFT is, but I know who the hell Tom Bilyeu is. How do I get a piece of that if I'm not comfortable? And I've seen your videos, by the way. It's 101. How do you do MetaMask? How do you do this and this? But there's still some of that slow learning that they're not comfortable with it yet, and they have to experience it to do it. So how do they gain access to this and not miss this boat? Because like Kong's, you know, I'm not financial advice, but if this thing, you know, blows up pretty quick before they're comfortable, it's going to be hard for them to get in.
Yeah, and I do worry about that. And, you know, this is part of, if people have been watching my content for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. I mean, so it started, I wouldn't have predicted that I'd be going down the crypto rabbit hole, but when we started locking businesses down, you saw my content change. And I immediately started bringing on financial experts and was like, yo, this is going to mess people up and I need somebody to guide them. And it was one of those where I realized all the people I had connections to, they knew how to talk at the macro level. Like they could tell you about what's going on with Evergrande in China and whether that's going to be a contagion event. And it's like the average person is like, what? Like, what do I do with that? So then as I went down the rabbit hole of NFTs and learned about cryptocurrency and all that, I was like, oh my God, like more people have to know about this. Again, I can't see the future. This is not financial advice, but to not look at it is crazy. So I'm just trying to get people to look at it. So in all of that, I have deep fears that people who are most in need of understanding this change and where it's going, who could most benefit from the drop, are going to miss out because they just don't know about NFTs. And look, I will, as my career progresses, I will, of course, look for new ways to bring people on, but I will never do it at the expense of diluting what's going on with the founder's key. So we have to be really thoughtful about that. My hope is by making that relentless tier, the entry level tier, as inexpensive as we're making it. And on Dutch, it goes from 0.1 to 0.05. So it's possible that those start selling at, you know, what I will say is about the lowest price you're going to see a real NFT project go for. Yeah. And we created 10,000 just of that. I don't remember if I said out loud already. There's a burn mechanic there, though. So there'll be 10,000 made available. And part of the reason we're looser on letting, because we're pretty restrictive on the other two tiers from a whales perspective. but much more lenient on that tier, because I don't want them to not sell out. Because if they don't sell out, we'll burn it. At least if there are whales out there that are like, look, I know where this is going, I know this game, and they scoop it up, at least they'll be for sale later. They'll, my gut instinct is they will go significantly up in price, but at least they will exist. So I'm being thoughtful about that. And then as we do future projects, so one thing we think a lot about is what we call scholarships. So already, every class I've ever taught ever in my life, if somebody can't afford and they want to take, I will give it to them for free. So we will find ways to do rad things for people on the come up. Like when I grew up, my whole family thought I was crazy. But from the time I was a little kid, I just kept telling everybody, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. And growing up sort of lower middle class in Tacoma, Washington, that was like laughable. And everybody thought that I was out of my mind, but whatever. But I was just like, I'm watching the movies of the 80s, right? Everything is set in upper, middle class Chicago suburbs. They all have these gigantic houses. I was like, well, I want some of that for myself. And because I believed it, it was like I did the things that I needed to do to make that happen. And now it breaks my heart to see how people feel that they're trapped in whatever class they're born into. And so that really is like, so there's this idea of an animus, that each one of us has this force within us, something that we feel we are so upset about that it actually animates us to take action. And after working in the inner cities as much as I have, and having people that I absolutely love and think are extraordinary human beings, to see how much their life has been thrashed by growing up in the inner city, like they just don't have the right frame of reference that will be useful to them. And seeing how hard it is to unwind that once you're, 25, and it's just like, that's all you know. And then I heard the stat that right now, in most of the developed world, your zip code is the #1 predictor of your future success, more than your IQ. Now, it already bothers me that your IQ, which you did not earn, has that big of an impact on your life. But I'm not okay with the fact that your zip code is the #1 determinant of your future success. So my wife and I played a game and said, no bullshit, what would it take to make sure that we made as meaningful a contribution to that as we could? And we started with education, and it didn't work. It only works on about 2% of the people. And so we said, okay, what do we know and what will work? And the answer is you have to hit them in the limbic part of their brain, which is all emotion, it's storytelling. And so given our experience, our passions, and that it will, we think, work, that's where we put all the time and energy. So anyway, that's a lot of words around. I will find ways to make sure that we draw more people in that would otherwise miss this kind of opportunity.
And I've listened to you speak on this before. The most important thing to you is to do it in this scalable way, which I totally understand. And I feel like I didn't think that way before I heard you kind of talk about that, but it makes sense. It's like you can help one individual person so much, right? But you can almost provide maybe not the same, but a very similar, maybe more impactful though in the long run, impact on that person in a scalable way. And I know you have a film school background, so that maybe that's where like the the media side and all that comes through. Will we ever see a Tom Bilyeu directed short film NFT? Will we see that, Tom?
I don't think you'll ever see me direct. So here and for a decade or more of my life, that was all I was interested in, was directing. And then as you start to, and irony of ironies, I got into business so I could direct films.
Yeah.
And then as you learn business, you begin to realize, whoa, like when you're the one doing the thing, you can only do that thing. When you're the one producing the thing, you can do a lot more. And when you're the one that owns the studio, then you can really do some stuff. And so because I happen to be wired for scale, like I love scale, how big can we take this? I just found myself more and more drawn to coming up a level, up a level, up a level. And now the thought of being the one having to direct it, I'm just like, oh God, like a film, you're going to spend 2 years, and there's no universe in which like it would grind impact theory to a halt. A short film, even that, better to bring on somebody who spent the last 10 years of their life getting good at that, and be the soil in which they can grow.
Of course. I didn't know if we'd see the biopic, the Tom Bilyeu story directed by Tom Bilyeu,
Definitely not. And the funny thing is that would be the worst thing in the world. So if you want to do a biopic, you've got to have somebody that can find the dirt. It's not interesting if it's just like, Tom is amazing, look how lovely he is. Like, you've got to be like, why the fuck is this guy so broken that he works this hard? It's like, calm down, motherfucker, you already made it. So yeah, somebody will have to unwind that one for me, because even I wonder why I work this hard.
Absolutely. And I saw this one, this comment. I just wanted to touch on it quickly before, we'll continue to talk a little bit about the NFT project, obviously. But this stuck out to me because we were talking about focus. Speaking of focus, can Tom talk about how he'd recommend someone who runs a non NFT business, like an e commerce brand, to stay focused on their current business model while something as attractive as, NFTs are booming?
Yeah, so this is where you have to be careful, because you can become a slave to your old business and then go out of business because you didn't adapt. So here's a really interesting statistic, and then I'll get to how you make sure that you pursue the right things, and so you're not just chasing shiny objects. In 1961, if you made it onto the S&P 500, the average amount of time that you would spend on the S&P 500 was 61 years. Now that number is closer to 12 years and shows no sign of stopping. And I have no idea how brief that period is going to get. I think we're headed towards something I call the 6-year cycle. And so if I had to bet, I would say within the high growth sector of the stock market, you're going to see that number slide below 10 years. So it is going to be that. What that means is you're going to have to put so much time and energy into understanding cultural movements, technology, and you're going to have a skunkworks R&D team that just isn't beholden to all the legacy stuff and can think way outside the box and create new things. So when NFTs come along, I think people need to seriously look at that. And I'll use an example from, whatever, 25-ish years ago that I think will make the point. That question is like somebody in 1995 saying, well, what do I do to make sure that I don't get distracted by this internet thing, and I just make sure that I stay with my core business? And it's like, I'm sure a lot of brick and mortar people thought that exact thing as they watched Amazon become the behemoth that they are. So you don't want to chase shiny objects, but you do want to recognize when something that is truly transformational comes along. And I will say NFTs are that thing. Now, again, look at it. If you reject it, fair enough, but look at it.
For sure. So, closing out on Impact Theory Founders Key, we've got 3 different levels. We've got Dutch auctions. What else should people know? When can they get it? Where can they get it? Give us the scoop, Tom.
Yeah. So one, get in our Discord. That's where the information, you'll find it just there. You can get any question answered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can go to impacttheory.com/Discord and it will auto redirect you to our server. The first one drops on October 13th. So to avoid gas wars, we're doing a lot of different things. And one of them is that each tier goes per day. So the legendary tier goes on the October 13th, the heroic tier goes on October 14th, and the relentless tier goes on October 15th. So that's the best way. And then if you're gunning for whitelist, we're whitelisting people if they bought the Neon Future Genesis piece that we did on Nifty Gateway with Steve Aoki. That gets you onto the whitelist. If you go and you're awesome in the Discord and you're elevating people and just being a rad person, that can get you on the list. Of course, everyone's going to feel differently about whether they were awesome enough to be on the list. But that really matters to us, and somebody doing it from a sincere place versus just like, am I on the white list yet? Am I on the white list yet? It's like, just go in and be rad. And like, people are going to feel the vibe. That's the big stuff. And then on Twitter is where I talk about NFT stuff. So if you follow me at Tom Bilyeu on Twitter, you'll know everything. And then we'll post the link to where to buy in our Discord, but it'll be a page on our website.
Awesome. Well, Tom, thanks so much for coming on, man. Really excited about the drop. I can feel the change that's coming because of this project. I'm really excited about it, and always a pleasure to have you on, man.
Awesome, dude. Thank you guys. I watch your content a lot, so really appreciate what you guys do. Super stoked to be back on, and hopefully this is the first of many, or this, I guess, the second already of many.
The second, Tom. Don't forget, Tom. Come on.
I would never.
The last one ended like in miraculous fashion, so we won't have that shocking ending this time.
That's hilarious. I had such a great time the first time. No worries at all. It was a blast.
We did too. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Peace out.